is there a difference between women and men?
Of course. I think we learned this at a very young age, watching even 12 and unders play. Going through puberty causes irreversible advantage that no matter the training, no matter the diet, no matter any alterable change you can make, will overcome that male advantage. Especially in sports like swimming, where lung capacity matters so much. Even something as silly as throat size, men have on average a 40% larger throat, which sounds like it's nothing, but when you're grasping for air, that 40% larger throat makes a huge difference in athletic success, not to mention height. You guys know the differences.
Ms. Robinson, do you agree with Ms. Gaines that there's a difference between women and men?
If the question is about trans women...
I'm just asking, is there a difference between women and men?
What I can say here is that the NCAA has rules in place. They've had rules in place for the last decade, and when this competition happened,
I'm going to try again.
The rules were clear.
Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? It's a yes-no question. Do you believe there's a difference?
Oh, I think that we're talking about this case with the NCAA.
No, I'm asking a question. Do you believe there's a difference between women and men?
That opening exchange pretty much tells you where this hearing was going. Ted Cruz wasn't asking a complicated question. He asked something very basic. If there is no meaningful biological difference between men and women, then why do we have women's sports in the first place? And what stood out to me was how difficult it became for the witness to give a simple answer. This isn't just a political argument. We're talking about competition, scholarships, records, and opportunities for female athletes. Cruz also brought in Riley Gaines, her experience competing against Leah Thomas, and data comparing male and female athletic performance. So let's go through the full exchange, because Cruz raised some questions here that deserved a direct answer. If you enjoy straightforward political commentary, hit the like button, subscribe, and let's get into it.
Cruz? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Title IX was a landmark civil rights law. It helped create the incredible breadth of women's sports and girls' sports that we see across the country. I believe in girls' sports. I believe in women's sports. I'm the proud father of two daughters who are both athletes. I think participating in competitive sports is a wonderful thing for a young girl. I think it is a wonderful thing for a woman. And I think, unfortunately, today's Democrat Party has decided that women's sports and girls' sports no longer matters. And they're willing to push radical legislation designed to destroy girls' sports and women's sports. Ms. Gaines, I want to thank you for your courage. You are relatively young, but you have demonstrated incredible courage. And because you have dared to speak up, you have been demonized, you have been vilified. I saw when you were attacked by a leftist mob at San Francisco State University for daring to speak up. You had an incredible record as a swimmer at the University of Kentucky. You were a two-time NCAA All-American. You were a five-time SEC champion. You're an SEC record holder and a two-time Olympic trial qualifier. But yet on March 27th, 2022, something changed. What happened on March 17th, 2022?
That's when Thomas and I raced in the 200 freestyle and again resulted in a tie.
And so you tied. What was the consequence of tying?
We went behind the awards podium where typically you're handed your trophy, you're marched out, you're named an All-American. And so we go back there and the official looks at both Thomas and myself and says, "Great job, but you guys tied. And we only have one trophy. Therefore, we're giving this trophy to Leah." And I question this, and I say, why? And at first, I shortened it in my testimony, but really he stumbled on his words. He didn't know how to answer this. And at first, he's, well, we're just doing this in chronological order. To which I further pressed, and I said, okay, well, what are you being chronological about? Because we tied. And if we're doing this off alphabetical order, G comes before T, so what are you being chronological about? To which this wasn't a script they had prepared for him. And he actually appreciated his honesty. He did say, we have to give the trophy for Leah because Leah has to have it for pictures. They've made that clear. Leah has to have the trophy for pictures. You can pose with this trophy, but you have to give yours back. You have to go home empty-handed. Leah Thomas takes the trophy home. End of story.
Now, let me ask you, as someone who's competed at the elite level, in your experience, is Is there a difference between women and men?
Of course. I think we learn this at a very young age watching even 12 and unders play. Going through puberty causes irreversible advantage that no matter the training, no matter the diet, no matter any alterable change you can make will overcome that male advantage, especially in sports like swimming where lung capacity matters so much. Even something as silly as throat size, men have on average a 40% larger throat, which sounds like it's nothing, but when you're grasping for air, that 40% larger throat makes a huge difference in athletic success, not to mention height. You guys know the differences.
Ms. Robinson, do you agree with Ms. Gaines that there's a difference between women and men?
If the question is about trans women,
I'm just asking, is there a difference between women and men?
what I can say here is that the NCAA has rules in place. They've had rules in place for the last decade, and when this competition
Okay, I'm
happened,
going to try again.
the rules were clear.
Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? It's a yes/no question. Do you believe there's a difference?
Oh, I think that we're talking about this case with the NCAA.
No, I'm asking a question. Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? Most people could answer this very simply. I'm curious if you're willing to do so.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just putting it into the context of the conversation that we're having. I think that there are definitions related to sex.
Is
but
that
I
a
also
yes?
think
So I'm
that
trying to
when
get a yes or no. I'm not trying to get a speech.
Is
there a difference between women and men?
I think that there are definitions for biological sex.
Okay, so you're
which
not
is
answering
different
that.
than
Let me
gender.
ask you this question then. Why do women's sports exist? If you can't define a difference between women and men, why not abolish women's sports and just tell little girls to swim with little boys and see who wins?
Oh, I'm simply saying that that sex is
My
different
question,
than gender.
why
and I
do-
believe
why
that
do
women's sports
sports
have a great
exist?
value. I mean, Senator, I'll tell you right
Ms.
now.
Robinson, please answer the question I'm asking you.
Absolutely.
Why do women's sports exist?
I think that there are so many positive benefits to sports.
But
I mean,
why have a
we've talked
separate
about it here
category for
today.
women? If there's no difference between women and men, why to have women's sports?
I'm saying that there's a difference between sex and gender, and that the NCAA has rules in place, which they have for the last decade.
Mr. Chairman,
which
I
determine
would
that
like to enter into
related
the
to
record an
participation.
article from Duke Law called Comparing Athletic Performances for the Best Elite Women to Boys and Men. And it goes through examining in 2017 the top records for women in the world in various track and field events. So, for example, in the 100 meter, the top record for women in the world was 10.71 seconds. Now, that record for the number one woman in the world in 2017 was, in the year 2017, broken by 124 boys under 18. In that same year, the record for the number one competing woman in the 100-meter dash in the world was broken by a total of 2,474 men. If the radical Democrat agenda to destroy girls' sports and women's sports succeeds, little girls will not have a chance to compete. So I ask unanimous consent that this article be entered into the record.
Without objection. Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, a recent
The first thing that stood out to me is that Cruz started with a pretty straightforward point. Women's sports exist for a reason. He brought up Title IX and the opportunities it created for girls and women. That's important because this debate isn't happening in a vacuum. Women's sports were established as separate categories because biological differences can have a major impact on athletic performance. Cruz then turned to Riley Gaines. Gaines wasn't speaking as an outsider. She was an accomplished NCAA swimmer, a multiple-time SEC champion and All-American who competed at the highest level. Her story about the 2022 NCAA championships was especially significant. She explained that she tied Leah Thomas in the 200 freestyle, but Thomas received the trophy because there was only one available and officials wanted Thomas to have it for photographs. That raises a legitimate question. If two athletes tie, what should determine who receives the recognition? For an elite athlete, a trophy isn't just a piece of metal. Records, rankings, awards, and recognition can have real consequences for their careers. Then Cruz moved into the bigger issue, biological differences. Gaines explained that puberty can create physical advantages that matter in sports, including swimming. Things like height, lung capacity, strength, and body composition can all affect performance. And that's why women's sports exist as a separate category in the first place. Then came the exchange that really caught my attention. Cruz asked the witness a simple question. Do you believe there is a difference between women and men? Instead of answering directly, the response shifted toward NCAA rules and the distinction between sex and gender. I understand that there are nuances to the broader debate, but Cruz was asking about the basic principle behind women's sports. If biological sex doesn't matter in athletic competition, then why separate the categories at all? That's the question he kept coming back to. And I think Cruz was right to press the issue. You can't simply say women's sports are valuable without explaining why women need a separate category. The reason is fundamentally connected to the physical differences between male and female athletes. Cruz then brought evidence into the discussion, citing comparisons between elite female performances and those of boys and men. His broader point was simple. The performance gap between male and female athletes is measurable. It isn't something that disappears just because we don't want to talk about it. And this is where I think Cruz's argument is strongest when you take politics out of it. You can believe people should be treated with dignity, while also believing competitive sports need rules designed to protect fair competition. Those ideas aren't mutually exclusive. The people most affected by these decisions are athletes. Girls who are training, competing, chasing scholarships, and trying to reach the highest level of their sport. So before changing the rules, it's reasonable to ask what those changes mean for the athletes already competing in women's sports. That's why Gaines' testimony matters. She was talking about something she experienced personally, and Cruz gave her the opportunity to explain it. You can disagree with Cruz's conclusions, but I think he was right to force the conversation back to the athletes and the basic purpose of women's sports. At the end of the day, if fairness in athletic competition matters, then biological differences matter too. And that's the question Cruz kept putting directly on the table.